proud people of the Empire State. From the financial and entertainment epicenter of New York City to the sleeping and empty small cities and towns of upstate, which once bustled with manufacturing, mining, and farming. We all know from inspiration, history, and nature, we deserve a return to the success and growth of generations past, a birthright being squandered by corruption in Albany, and the depredations of an insecure, scheming mountebank posing as governor, who loathes both us and himself. As liberty beckoned to enslaved peoples behind the Iron Curtain via American broadcasts after World War II, we now say, believe, rise, and join us. Welcome to Radio Free New York.
Hey guys, welcome to Radio Free New York. I'm your host, Andrew Hollister, and we are here in the WYSL studios. And as always, I've got Bob Savage here with me.
Oh, wait a minute. Hi. Sorry, just nodded off there a little bit. Don't take it personally. It has nothing to do with you.
Yeah, late night for you, right? Or early morning, or
a little bit of both. Yeah, up on the mosquito-infested Pinnacle Hill with what's called the repack going on up there of all the TV stations. WXXI, our landlord for FM 92.1, installing new TV antennas on their tower. Fascinating project. They had a giant crane up there, and they're lifting this stuff up. They had a tower crews in from Kentucky. And what does that have to do with us? Well, all stations on Pinnacle Hill, that's all the TV stations in Rochester and several FMs, including ours, had to sign off last night for the safety of the workers. And then we're having a new antenna put up. By the time this is all done, that project's supposed to wrap tonight.
Nice, very good. And I think
better reception for 92.1.
Yeah, that's going to be awesome. I'm sure people will be really happy about that.
Well, some will.
Yeah, some will, some won't. And let me mute the speakers on my computer there. All right.
You're missing your big old camera that you usually have here.
Yeah. I've got it. Maybe I'll set up over the break. It's just running a little slow today myself. So,
really?
Yeah.
I didn't see you up on Pinnacle Hill. Were you there last night?
No, I wasn't. But I think, I did a lot of yard work over the weekend in that super hot weather. And I think I just, I think it's just catching up with me. Didn't sleep well last night, so here I am. I'm dragging a little bit, and I'm not a coffee drinker either. So I know a lot of people, they run off coffee. I drink mostly water, so no pick me up for me this morning. So we're gonna talk about some things today. One is an ATF letter. It actually went out last week, but I didn't see it until today. Bringing about some additional federal regulations on guns, basically. So we're going to talk about that. After that, I think we're going to talk about the Bernie Sanders campaign. I know the previous radio show, you guys hit on it just a little bit, so I'm going to pick up where you guys left off, kind of give my 2 cents on that. And then if there's enough time, which I think there will be, kind of depends on if you guys call in the show and ask some questions or not, we will talk about New York State raising the age for purchasing cigarettes. And one of the things I want to talk about was
any tobacco.
Yeah, I think it's tobacco products as a whole, actually. That's a better representation. But one of the things I want to talk about specific to that is how Governor Cuomo's office, the New York State legislature, and the media all says that they're raising the age for smoking, which is not the case. That language doesn't even exist in the law. They are simply raising the age to purchase tobacco products. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. But before we do, what would you say, Bob? And I know you're like half asleep here, so I'll be gentle with you.
I don't have the aversion to coffee either. Yeah. So I've got some.
What would you say if I told you the Second Amendment only protected military-style weapons from regulation, not civilian-style weapons?
No.
Isn't that confusing, right?
No. I think that arms, If you just take the term arms, I think that means anything that goes bang when you pull a trigger.
Yeah. So interestingly enough, as I was doing some research, as I always try to do for you guys, give you guys, as much education as I can, so that you can walk away feeling informed and make your own decision. You don't have to listen to my opinion. You just listen to the education, make your own opinion. I was doing a little bit of research on the NFA, the National Firearms Act, which regulates Class 3 firearms, machine guns, all of this sort of stuff, suppressors.
All the stuff that you can't have because you'll only hurt yourself.
Exactly. And I found while doing research on this that in 1938, there was a court case, United States versus Miller. He had a short-barreled rifle, which was regulated under the National Firearms Act. And they actually said that the federal government had the right to regulate the short-barreled shotgun because the military wasn't using it. And they literally said, and this is just like, wow, have things changed, right, since this court case. But it was so funny. They said, well, the military doesn't use short-barreled rifles. And the Second Amendment protects militia-styled military weapons from federal regulation. Therefore, this can be regulated.
I'd really like to see this guy's copy of the Constitution.
Yeah.
I'm wondering where that language came from.
So this court case actually ended up being overturned that same year by the Supreme Court, which was very interesting is the entire case actually was dropped entirely because Miller was murdered a month before it went to trial.
Oh, no. So, I don't mean to laugh at somebody's misfortune, but...
Yep. But it's interesting because had that case carried on, I think we would have had some legitimate case law in place that would have solved some of the issues we're struggling with today. Unfortunately, that didn't happen, and the Supreme Court reversed that district court ruling, held that the NFA position of criminalizing possession of certain firearms was not a violation of the Second Amendment.
What was that district? Does it say there?
It was in Arkansas. It was a Western District in Arkansas. Okay. Yeah. So I start that off. Hopefully you guys are a little interested now. Maybe you'll listen to the rest of the show. I just found that so surprising to me that I've heard so many arguments, for the Second Amendment, against the Second Amendment, everything in between. And not once did I ever hear the argument that the Second Amendment only protects military-style weapons, which is interesting because if that ruling held up, that would mean you and I could own rocket launchers because the federal government could not infringe on that, but maybe we couldn't own a revolver if it wasn't in military use.
Couldn't have a 22. But we have an RPG, though.
Yeah. So that was the strangest ruling I'd ever seen. Wanted to share it with you guys because, man, I just hadn't heard that one before.
That's really loony. So, and by the way, there's an object lesson for you. And what can happen, when we let judges decide stuff for us?
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, that's nuts.
Yeah. So I wanted to share.
I'd love to know the rationale. I got to read that decision. Where did that come from? Where did you get that authority?
So I only read kind of a summary of it. So I didn't get to read the nitty gritty. It's something I'm hoping to do later today because, like I said, it was something I hadn't heard before. It seemed that the logic that they were following was that since the Second Amendment mentioned militias, that the Second Amendment only applied to firearms in use by militias and military. And therefore, the federal government could not restrict firearms in use by military or militias, but they could other, weapons. So I think that if we were to read the Second Amendment, which it looks like you've got a pocket constitution in your hand there, you want to give us the word for word on that one?
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That's a pretty simple and direct.
Clear to me.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That to me was a surprise, caught me off guard, and like I said, I was looking at the ATF changes that came in last week when I came across this. That's what we're going to talk about when we come back from the break. This letter that the ATF sent out and kind of what gun control is looking like these days. So we'll be back here in a moment on Radio Free New York.
Your business relies on computers and technology to operate. Slow, unreliable networks and servers can cause unplanned downtime and affect your bottom line. The experts at Simple Tech Innovations are here to help. Their preventative maintenance program ensures that your computers and network are kept up to date and monitored for any issues, keeping your business running smoothly. They also help clients achieve HIPAA, PCI, and New York State cybersecurity compliance to keep your network safe and secure. Whatever your business IT needs are, Simple Tech Innovations should be your first call. They've won the Best in Rochester 8 years in a row and have an A+ Better Business Bureau rating. Call them today for a free consultation at 585-200-3182. That's 585-200-3182. Simple Tech Innovations.
A reminder from Abate Monroe County. American bikers aim toward education. Distracted driving is dangerous, so pull over and eat. Don't try to read your mail and newspaper, and stay off your cell
Coming back.
phone to be more alert, making it a habit to expect the unexpected. Remember to look twice, save a life. Train yourself to watch for motorcycles which are harder to see. Join Abate, and your family will be protected with a free $4,000 accident policy. Ride safe, ride free, ride often. Abate. If you ride, ride with us. Google Abate, Monroe County.
You're listening to Radio Free New York
on the WYSL stations.
All right, we're back here on Radio Free New York talking about gun control and how it's changed over the years. For me, these last few years have been especially disappointing in terms of gun control, and I'll tell you guys why. It's no secret. Although if you're just joining the show now, maybe you're not familiar with my background. The big push for me to get registered to vote, to get politically active, the first thing was the SAFE Act. The New York SAFE Act really pushed me to political activism. It's obviously branched out well beyond Second Amendment issues since then. But in 2013, when the SAFE Act passed, that was my line in the sand. That was my, whoa, I need to get involved. Like this does impact me. This is important. And as time has gone on, I've seen more and more gun control measures passed. Things like the red flag laws are some of the most recent things. They're just really frustrating to me as a gun owner. And I feel it from the average gun owner and even from people who aren't gun owners. I see more and more people who say, Andrew, I don't own a gun and I don't know that I ever would. But this is really frustrating to me. I really feel like this is wrong.
Well, it is really wrong. Obviously, it is. And I mean, even the ACLU's against these red flag laws.
That should tell you something, I think. It really should. So my frustration today comes from a national level, and I know there's going to be some people that are maybe a little unhappy about this, and I get it, especially because I know there's a good amount of listeners. I would assume the overwhelming majority of the listeners to the show are probably big supporters of Trump, just based on demographic. That's my assumption. I could be wrong, but we've been seeing a lot of gun control out of, whether it's out of Trump's administration or just under his term, if you will. I was really thinking that when the Republicans held majority of the executive branch, and Congress, I thought that we were going to get like a congressional carry, a constitutional carry, across state lines. Like I was hopeful for that. Probably naive, but I was hopeful.
R does not, little does not equal sign, with a slash through it. R does not equal conservative
Yeah.
necessarily.
Yep, yep, and that's what you see. So you know,
A lot of
that
lefty
was-
Republicans. A
Yeah,
lot of them.
yeah. So that was.
By the
maybe-
way, you all know who you are out there.
Yes, yeah. You know who you are, and you're pretending to be what you're not, and that just is what it is. But so that was maybe my first major disappointment over the last few years. Then the ban on bump stocks was really disappointing to me, and the NRA signed on to that as well. And guys, listen, I've never actually used a bump stock before. I haven't. I definitely probably never will now because now they're illegal, but you know, but even if they weren't illegal, it's probably not something I would have spent money on, probably not something I would, you know, find myself using, but I still find the ban wrong. I still find it just not consistent with the Second Amendment. I just don't think it's right. Now, I see a lot of people who are defending the ban on bump stock saying, well, you can't be accurate with it anyways. That's not the point. The point is the government should have no say in the owning of that equipment. You have your Second Amendment right. It shouldn't
Shall
exist.
not be infringed. I mean, look, so if the government comes out with a regulation that says, well, you know, we're not going to ban any weapons. We can't. I should use the term firearms. Excuse me. Weapons is something you use to kill somebody. But there's no way that you can legally pick it up and handle it with your hands. I think that's tantamount to saying,
Yeah.
your rights are infringed.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
if the way that you hold a gun, which really is what a bump stock amounts to.
Yeah.
I mean,
You can
you don't
simulate a
need
bump
the
stock
dope
without one.
That's
Yeah.
right. You don't need the dopey piece of wood or plastic or whatever.
Yeah.
You can do it with your thumb and your belt loop if you practice it a little bit.
Yeah, you can. These bans are, and actually, let me take a step back. The purpose of our Constitution was not to tell government how they could regulate our life. It was not to say what freedoms we are allowed to have. The purpose of the Constitution was to restrict government, to tell government, hey, you're going to keep your hands off these things. It is not a permission slip for us. It's a restriction for government. So when I see things like banning bump stocks and then Trump talking about banning suppressors, which to me is like, I think you'd get more support for legalizing suppressors in most states, which I think was it 36 or 42 states they're already legal in. You know, there's only a few states that they're not. Why would you do that? Why would you, especially when that's your base? You know, that's I think the thing that hurts me the most when I look at that is why would you be turning off your base? And I can't explain that. I'm sure there's some reason. Maybe it seemed good, and then why would the NRA of all organizations back this stuff?
Well, the NRA has been disappointing lately. I think it's been infiltrated, much in the same way Scope was. And I don't know. That's just me, folks. Don't blame that comment on Andrew.
Sure,
But I mean, no, it's just it's inexplicable what the NRA has been doing lately. They're a troubled organization right now. I think they'll soldier their way through it, but
yeah, hopefully they'll flush out, you know, what the issue is. My thing is, and I get letters from the NRA constantly asking for money and saying, oh, this new gun control is coming about, send us money. And so I don't even know if I feel that they've been infiltrated as much as I feel like they're becoming like a government organization. They're just thriving off of money. They're not actually looking at their mission, and they've lost their way. You know, whether that's through infiltration or just not being held accountable by their membership, I think is maybe a bigger issue. I don't know, but to me it's an issue. So the latest thing is the ATF has now decided to change how certain weapons are going to be considered under the NFA, which is the National Firearms Act. I'm going to give you guys a little bit of history on what the NFA is, my understanding of it. I'm not an attorney. I was going to see if I could get one of the gun shop owners on the show today, but it was just too late notice. So let me give you guys a little bit of background. The NFA was passed in 1934. So this is a long time ago. And this is straight from the ATF.gov website. This quote right off of their website. I'm going to read it to you. The original act imposed a tax on the making and transfer of firearms defined by the act, as well as a special occupational tax on persons and entities engaged in the business of importing, manufacturing, and dealing in NFA firearms. The law also required the registration of all NFA firearms with the Secretary of Treasury. Firearms subject to the 1934 Act include shotguns and rifles having barrels less than 18 inches in length, certain firearms described as any other weapons, machine guns, and firearm mufflers and silencers. So what do you hear here? I hear tax, tax, tax. I also thought it was interesting that the firearms are registered with the Secretary of Treasury, which to me is like, what does the Treasury have to do with firearms? A little bit further down, and I bolded this because this I think is important. As the legislative history of the law discloses, its underlying purpose was to curtail, if not prohibit, transactions in NFA firearms. So, okay, they create a firearm tax, but really the underlying issue is how do we prevent people from getting access to these firearms? Now, I'm not sure how the NFA was sold to the general public. I don't know if it was sold as a tax or as gun control. But clearly, even according to the ATF website, it was a gun control measure to try to make firearms inaccessible to people. So what is an NFA firearm? What does that mean? They have a whole list of stuff that falls under this act. Here's the thing. The price for what's called a stamp to acquire one of these weapons, transfer one of these weapons, is $200. Actually hasn't changed since 1934. But $200 is almost obtainable for people today. It's still pretty expensive. Shouldn't exist at all. But I wanted to look back and say, what was $200 back in 1934? So
You could buy a pretty serviceable car for that back then.
I mean, yeah,
A brand new car was $795, $695.
There you go. Yeah. So I went back. I just jumped on Google, found one of those inflation calculators, and according to that, it was $3,823.03 in today's money.
I think about 12 times.
Yeah. So could you imagine, going to the store, going, yeah, I want that rifle right there for $500, and they go, sure, $4,000 tax stamp. I mean, that's essentially what we're talking about. So this act made it so that only a handful of people could really afford these firearms. And as you might have guessed it, the wealthy, the rich people that could afford to pay, $4,000 just for the transfer of the firearm. Politicians, of course, and their private security details, who were mostly exempt from this, by the way. And wait for it. Organized crime, which, they weren't paying for the stamps anyways. So here's the thing. I mean, government is constantly trying to make it so that only they can afford to defend themselves. You see it here in New York, and not even just afford. In this case, it was afford. In other cases, like here in New York, we've got the SAFE Act. They just make it so that it's flat out illegal to have the same weapons that, say, Cuomo's security detail has to protect him, or any of our Congress people here in New York, or, our senators, our assemblymen. Although I don't know, do you know if they have a security detail as a Senate or Assembly? I don't think they do.
No, I don't think it's provided for by the state. Maybe some of the, like the speaker, assembly speaker,
some of
and
the higher ups there.
Yeah. The head of the Senate.
But I bet you if they wanted to pay for one privately, I bet you they could get exemption for them. Guys, when we come back, we're going to talk about this change that the ATF made, and then we're going to talk about the Bernie Sanders campaign.
Yay! Hey, love that.
We'll be back on Radio Free New York.
You're listening to the voice of liberty. WYSL. AM 1040 Avon, Rochester, FM 92.1 Rochester, FM 95.5 Spencerport, and WYSL1040.com everywhere.
Why do businesses choose to move their website from Wix and Squarespace to SimpleTech Innovations? Maybe it's their excellent customer service or attention to detail. Maybe it's their ability to give a truly customized solution. Or perhaps they just like the fact that SimpleTech is a local small business that builds great relationships with its clients. Whatever the reason may be, you can rest assured knowing that the local team at SimpleTech has your best interest in mind when building or updating your website. They're hands-on and love helping customers achieve their goals. But don't take my word for it. They've won the best in Rochester 8 years in a row and have an A+ Better Business Bureau rating. If your website doesn't match your dreams or isn't achieving your goals, give the professionals at SimpleTech Innovations a call today for a consultation at 585-200-3182. That's 585-200-3182. SimpleTech Innovations.
Avon Gun and Hunting Supply, a locally owned and operated gun shop specializing in pre-owned firearms and repairs. Get your rifle, shotgun, or pistol serviced and tuned before you take it to the field. Open daily. Avon Gun, East Main Street, between the Bank of Castile and Charlotte's Web of Odds and Ends.
Your business relies on computers and technology to operate. Slow, unreliable networks and servers can cause unplanned downtime and affect your bottom line. The experts at SimpleTech Innovations are here to help. Their preventative maintenance program ensures that your computers and network are kept up to date and monitored for any issues, keeping your business running smoothly. They also help clients achieve HIPAA, PCI, and New York State cybersecurity compliance to keep your network safe and secure. Whatever your business IT needs are, SimpleTech Innovations should be your first call. They've won the best in Rochester 8 years in a row and have an A+ Better Business Bureau rating. Call them.
Coming back.
A free consultation at 585-200-3182. That's 585-200-3182. SimpleTech Innovations.
Radio Free New York on WYSL. AM 1040, FM 92.1, and FM 95.5 West.
All right, welcome back to Radio Free New York. I'm your host, Andrew Hollister. We're talking about the ATF. We are talking about federal gun regulation and just keeping you guys up to date on what's going on here, talking about some of the things that are going on today. And one of those is one of the fastest growing items on the U.S. market today in terms of firearms is actually AR pistols. So an interesting little niche market there. It's a AR-styled, technically a rifle round, but they're making them small. They're making them in a way that you can legally have them as a pistol. And what some people have is they have what's called a wrist brace, which is a brace that you can attach to your wrist to kind of control the movement of the firearm. They're kind of goofy shaped, to be honest, but a lot of people like them. They're growing very, very quickly. And the ATF has previously issued some statement about how those wrist braces, they're called a stabilizer brace, how they can and cannot be used. And I believe it was actually under Obama that they basically said, yeah, they're fine. You can use them. They won't be regulated as an NFA item or like a short-barreled rifle. Well, last week they wrote out basically saying they're not totally rescinding that, but now they're saying if that stabilizer is foldable, if it's telescopic, that sort of things, it won't count towards the measurement of the rifle anymore and could be classified as an NFA item, which means you will have to now pay a tax, go through additional background check, fingerprinting, all sorts of things. And depending on the state you're in, may no longer be accessible to you. So this comes to me as just another issue of why is this happening? Why are we allowing it to happen? Why is the federal government in any way, shape, or form trying to regulate firearms? I mean, it shouldn't. I think it's pretty clear. We have the Second Amendment, says shall not be infringed. Here's the ATF saying, oh, no, you can't have this. If you want to have it, you have to pad my pocket. I've got an issue with that. I've got a big issue with that. They also have said that if you add an additional grip on the AR pistol, and this isn't just AR pistols, there are other firearms that fall into this classification. It's just the most commonly known one is the AR pistol. It's the one people are most familiar with. You've got your CZ Scorpion and some other firearms that fall under the same ruling here. They're now saying, if you add a foregrip, it's now a two-handed weapon, no longer can be considered a pistol. So now that is also an issue.
Is that class 3 then?
That's a really good question. That would be a question for one of the gun shop owners who kind of lives and breathes this stuff every day. It's possible. It certainly requires a stamp and an additional background check. I don't know
in any event.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
So it's like in the same category with these Tommy guns and.
Yes, yeah, it would start to fall under that. Which, if you go to the ATF website, atf.gov, you'll see they have just an enormous list for you to go through. This kind of feels like Safe Act starting to happen on a national level, though, especially with
it's a scary thing.
You have a foregrip. Now, all of a sudden, it's classified as something scary and dangerous. So this might actually be a glimpse of the Safe Act starting to happen on a federal level. And I tell you what, I've got a lot of people who I see on social media saying, listen, Trump supports the Second Amendment. He's going to help us out. If that's the case, I want to see him get up nationally and say, hey, ATF, stop it. No more of this. Let's stop it.
He's reversed position on several issues lately. Why can't he reverse position on the dopey bump stock thing? Yeah,
and maybe retract what he was saying about trying to get rid of silencers. Silencers of all of the things, I think, that protects your hearing. There's some serious thing. And if you look at people in the military who are, they come back 60% deaf, 70% deaf, especially on their shooting side. I think that alone should be enough for states and our federal government to say, yeah, you know what? Our veterans are suffering from this. Clearly there's an issue. Silencers are actually a personal safety device to protect your hearing. Why would we tell people they can't have that? That to me is just, I don't know. Feels like common sense to me, but it's not so common.
Seen too many movies where there's some chase going on, and they're firing at each other, and the guns are going choo choo, choo choo.
Yep. Yeah,
doesn't happen.
Yeah, that's so. This is where I'm saying, hey, if you are a big Trump supporter, I would say, reach out to him, whether that's via Twitter, social media, send him a letter and say, hey, I elected you, I voted you, I support you, I don't support this. And push him to change his mind. And same thing, send it to the NRA, hold your people at Scope accountable and really say, hey, listen, what are you guys doing? The Second Amendment seems like a pretty clear thing to me. Why are you doing these things? And just to that point, I got an email from Scope just yesterday, and they were saying they wanted people to take a survey of why they're not showing up to meetings. And I can tell you, it's stuff like what happened in last year's gubernatorial election, pushing out pro-Second Amendment candidates while backing non-Second Amendment candidates. I've got somebody here actually commented mentioning how the Republican candidate for governor last year and the Republican Party in general have kind of just crawled back away in the shadows now. They're not making noise, not fighting for things anymore. It's just not happening. While Larry Sharpe, who was running for governor last year, he's still out, hitting all the counties. He's still out doing stuff, still pushing for these items. And guys, gotta hold people accountable. Push them to be accountable for the promises they make, the words that they speak, and the actions they take. We've got to do it. So what does this change mean for you? If you have an AR pistol, it appears now that if you have one of these, if you have a foregrip, you're now walking around with a felony, it seems like, and a federal felony, not even a state felony, a federal felony. And if your firearm has one of those stabilizers on it, that could change its classification too. It seems to depend on a few things that I don't totally understand, but definitely if it's a foldable stock or a telescopic adjustable one, it seems to change how you can measure that firearm to see if it's a federal felony to have it without ponying up $200 and going through a background check. You know what else is worth noting is the firearms registered under the NFA used to be shared with state agencies. And what was happening is you paid your $200 for a tax stamp and then go through the whole background check. You're a perfectly law-abiding citizen. The federal government would then take that registration and turn it over to the state you lived in. And if the state passed a law that made that weapon illegal, they'd come and arrest you. So it was not good at all. And literally somebody won in 1968. Somebody won a lawsuit against this. Basically, under your Fifth Amendment right, this person was arrested and charged with not registering their firearm under the NFA. And in their state, it seemed it was illegal for them to have that firearm. So they actually won the constitutional grounds on this case by saying that by registering the firearm with under the NFA, they couldn't force it because of your Fifth Amendment right to not self-incriminate. And they actually won that, surprisingly. I mean, it was one of those things you look at and you go, oh yeah,
what just happened?
Interesting. The government just kind of did that thing where they really they shouldn't have been doing it to begin with. So of course that brought around more gun legislation. Literally in 1968, what was the name of it? I can't find it. It was something like, it's the Gun Control Act of 1968. Like, they didn't hide it behind words like SAFE Act before. They're like, this is the Gun Control Act, and we're going to pass it. Guys, we're going to take another break here on Radio Free New York. When we come back, we're going to talk about the Bernie Sanders campaign and minimum wage here on Radio Free New York.
Your business relies on computers and technology to operate. Slow, unreliable networks and servers can cause unplanned downtime and affect your bottom.
Nope, totally understood. Many this deck in place, just have to screw in the last 4 screws and it's
smoothly. They also help clients achieve HIPAA, PCI, and New York State cybersecurity compliance to keep your network safe and secure. Whatever your business IT needs are, Simple Tech Innovation should be your first call. They've won the best in Rochester 8 years in a row and have an A+ Better Business Bureau rating. Call them today for a free consultation at 585-200-3182. That's 585-200-3182. Simple Tech Innovations.
Ready to get wet? Come to the Soak Zone at Seabreeze. Catch the crazy curves of the new Twister water slide. Take a little plunge on the new pipeline. Plus, do all your favorites: the dumping bucket, the raceway slide, aqua blasters, and more. Come get soaked at the new Soak Zone. There's so much water fun so close to home.
Come get your summer. It's
Get your tickets online at Seabreeze.com.
Why do businesses choose to move their website from Wix and Squarespace to SimpleTech Innovations? Maybe it's their excellent customer service or attention to detail. Maybe it's their ability to give a truly customized solution. Or perhaps they just like the fact that SimpleTech is a local small business that builds great relationships with its clients. Whatever the reason may be, you can rest assured knowing that the local team at SimpleTech has your best interest in mind when building or updating your website. They're hands-on and love helping customers achieve their goals. But don't take my word for it. They've won the best in Rochester 8 years in a row and have an A+ Better Business Bureau rating. If your website doesn't match your dreams or isn't achieving your goals, give the professionals at SimpleTech Innovations a call today for a consultation at 585-200-3182. That's 585-200-3182. SimpleTech Innovations.
You're listening to Radio Free New York
On the WYSL stations.
All right, guys, I'm back here on Radio Free New York, your host, Andrew Hollister. We're going to talk a little bit about the Bernie Sanders campaign. You might have seen in the news that Bernie Sanders has been for years now advocating for a $15 minimum wage, calls it a living wage, the minimum amount that you would need to survive in today's economy. But he wasn't paying his staffers that. In fact, many of them, the reports show, and some of the leaked information from some of the people on his team showed that they were making $13 an hour. So the they're fighting for this policy, but they weren't practicing what they preached. Some of the staffers got upset about it. They didn't quite go on strike, but they started getting pretty grumpy about it, made a scene. So then they started negotiating for a $15 an hour minimum wage. First thing right out of the gate, if you're fighting for something like that and that is like your core belief, why do your staff have to almost go on strike to even get you to consider taking on that position? If they support you, if you believe that's the right thing to do, why wouldn't you just be doing it? So that's my first take right out of the gate is, why aren't you practicing what you preach? If that's truly what you believe, then you should just be doing it. Whether it's federally mandated or not, whether the state mandates it or not, you should do what you believe is right. So that's my first thing, especially with how passionately they talk about how people can't live with less than $15 an hour. Then why would you even offer people less? I don't understand. So, I think the appropriate term is probably hypocrisy, but there we go. Here we are. So now they're moving to $15 an hour, and I think the campaign is maybe getting what I would call a crash course in economics, because what has happened right off the bat, the employees are now demanding we need $15 an hour minimum wage. And for those of you who don't understand, let me actually take a few steps back here. For those of you who don't know, when a campaign runs, especially a big campaign like a presidential campaign, it is not uncommon for you to have paid staff, a lot of paid staff. You'll have people that handle media relations, people that coordinate volunteers, people who write press releases, handle advertising, reach out to coalitions, handle your treasury, finances, making sure that you are following regulations, a policy team who coordinates your policy, make sure it's right, make sure it's accurate, a legal research team, all sorts of positions. Some are paid, some are volunteer. It's not uncommon to have paid staff on any type of campaign. Even some really small campaigns might have a paid treasurer or a paid media relations person. That could be as small as like maybe a town mayor campaign, all the way up to, assembly, senate, gubernatorial, presidential. The teams just grow in size the more area you have to cover the campaign. So this kind of reminds me of last election when, so Bernie's here advocating for $15 an hour minimum wage on a federal level. So this would impact every state in the union, but hasn't actually been paying them that. Very similar to when Hillary was advocating for equal pay based on gender or sex. But then when people took a look at her campaign filings, they found
Eric Rochester,
that she actually had paid the least to her female staffers and had the largest wage gap compared to all of the other candidates who are running. And it sounds like I've got a caller on the line, Eric from Rochester.
Yes. I originally called about the firearms issue, but I'll make a little observation here about the Bernie Sanders issues with the observation that obviously in his case, what is sauce for the goose is not sauce for the gander. That's quite obvious at this point. But on the firearms thing, I actually think it should be made clear to everybody that anytime ATF makes a regulation that categorizes anything into becoming needful of registration under NFA, that automatically means that in New York State, which does not do NFA items, you can't have it anymore.
Yes.
It's across the board. No, there are no ifs, ands, or buts about it. That's an issue that came up in my family because my brother moved to Virginia, which is NFA friendly, and was considering getting a couple of items, except that he was dissuaded from that because he realized that one of his things is he would like to come back home here and visit relatives and friends and do a little shooting with his really cool new stuff, but he wouldn't be able to bring them into New York.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So that's another big issue. You know, ATF takes something and just in writing, you know, and ATF isn't elected. You know, this is appointed individuals, you know, in an organization that's running. They put something in writing and boom, just like that, now it's illegal in New York State. So yeah, it's a big issue. Thank you so much for your call, Eric.
Yep, sure.
Oh. So here we go. We've got Bernie Sanders, his campaign, pushing for $15 minimum wage on a federal level, not actually paying his staffers that. They kind of go into revolt, and he goes, okay, we will pay you $15 an hour. But, surprise, now hours are being cut. So this really goes back to just a basic understanding of economics, or to be honest, I'm sure they get how it works. Maybe the staffers didn't, but certainly I think Bernie should understand how this works. So here you go. Now you've got staffers who are getting cut, some of them as many as 20 hours a week to make it so they can make this $15 an hour. Here's the thing. Not everybody was getting paid under $15 an hour. In fact, there's people on staff getting paid more than $15 an hour. So what did the campaign do to compensate for this? Well, I'll give them credit to the campaign because I don't know how many campaigns actually pay for medical. It's something that I am not aware of. The Bernie Sanders campaign actually gives their staffers medical. So anybody making $15 an hour as the campaign's minimum wage is actually getting their health insurance paid for in full by the campaign. Once you make more than that, guess what? Your medical's not paid in full anymore. So my question is anybody really getting paid anything differently once you calculate up their benefits? You know, if you're getting paid $15 an hour and then with full health insurance paid for, but then those are getting paid $17, $18, $19, $20 an hour are actually losing a contribution to their health insurance, do the benefits add up to where it doesn't matter if you get a raise or not? The campaign's just still paying out the same amount? My suspicion is yes, that the campaign isn't actually paying out anything more or less per employee. Like there might be some minuscule discrepancies. But my thought is that, yeah, they realize just like anybody else that, oh, if I pay you more by reduce your benefits, they're not actually paying out anymore. Now the responsibility for the healthcare is now on the employee, whereas before it was on the employer. And that's how they're getting around paying this additional benefit, paying this, extra $15 an hour minimum wage now here in the campaign. They're just shuffling around money. They're doing the same exact thing that we see our elected officials do on the state level, on a local level, and on a federal level, where they say, oh, we're cutting taxes, but they're not cutting spending. In fact, most of the time, if not all the time, when they say that they're cutting taxes, they're increasing spending. So what are they doing? They're doing the same thing that the Bernie campaign is doing, where they go, oh, we have to raise you $15 an hour, but we're going to cut your hours. And, oh, you make more than $15 an hour? Well, we'll just cut your benefits to make up for that. They're not changing what's being spent. So your elected officials do the same exact thing with your taxes. Oh, we'll cut the payroll tax, but hey, you know what we're going to do? We're going to increase the assessment on your home so you're paying more in property tax. And it's really interesting to me, because you sit there and you look and you go, I don't quite understand here how my town's budget last year was $1 million. This year it's $1.1 million. So somehow they're spending an extra $100,000 this year, yet my taxes were, air quotes, cut. Your taxes weren't cut. What they did is they reduced one tax somewhere, whether that's gas tax, payroll tax, some sort of tax there, maybe a fee, something like that. But then they just increased another tax somewhere else. Maybe they reassess your property, so now you're paying more property tax. Maybe they increase a fee on a service that you need. They increase some sort of cost somewhere else along the way. They are getting their money. They are spending more of your money than ever before, while trying to trick you into believing that they are cutting taxes. And, I would just say it doesn't matter, you take
3 minutes.
You take $100 bill, and I don't care how you cut up that $100 bill. Cut it into little squares, cut it into rectangles, split it up, get 100 pieces of that dollar bill. At the end of the day, you still have $100. There's no math in any sort of way where you take $100 and somehow you divide it up and you then have more than $100. It doesn't happen. But that's the thing that people are talking about, when they're talking about, raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour. Listen, I'm not saying there aren't people that don't deserve to be paid $15 an hour. I'm saying that government should not dictate how the market works. Allow the market to choose which jobs are worth $15 an hour. What jobs are worth $10 an hour? What jobs are worth $50 an hour? Because there's jobs out there that people gladly pay $50 an hour for, and even more than that. But the market should decide. What happens is when government gets in the way and says, no, you can't pay this person less than $15 an hour. You must pay them $15 an hour. Guess what happens? Hours are going to get cut. That's just the short of it. And people will not make more per se, because here's the thing. Say that you run an organization, a small business, something like that, and now your people who are making $12 an hour, now everybody's got to make $15 an hour. Well, first things first, you're probably going to reduce hours of some employees, if not all, or maybe let one or two go, because you have no choice. It's either that or everybody becomes unemployed when you shut your business down. Then what you do is, well, now they're getting $3 to $4 extra an hour. You know what's going to happen? Now you're going to expect them to do the additional jobs that the person who is getting paid less that you let go, you're going to expect more from them. So now they're getting paid more, but now they're doing 3 or 4 more jobs. And to keep up with the additional amount that you're paying on payroll tax, unemployment insurance, and all these other things that are based on the salaries that you pay your employees, guess what? Now you are raising prices. So nobody's actually making more because now they're buying things at a higher price. Guys, thank you so much for joining me here on Radio Free New York. I will be back on Friday and I'll talk to you then.